Everybody, welcome to Cash Part 2. This is cash disbursements and receipts. So before we get to our bank reconciliations, I want to, which is really we're going through and essentially making sure that what we've recorded on our books is equal to the bank or reflects what should be on the bank, on our bank statement. I do want to spend a little bit of time about talking about when we do make a cash disbursement or when we have a cash receipt, what are some things that we want to consider having in place in terms of controls. So for cash disbursements, now this may seem a little bit extreme, but the first thing you might have is if I'm making a huge purchase, I may need to have the board of directors to authorize a transaction. Now, most of the times, if I'm going to basically order vendors, order services, I want to do so through a purchase order. Okay, so that purchase order is something that is very, very important. Just take a quick break and I'll show you what one looks like. So if you go through and you type in, essentially, if you go through and you type in purchase order onto YouTube, onto the internet, onto Google, you'll find that here's a sample of a purchase order. And when you're showing a purchase order, really what the purpose of the purchase order is to show the company's prior authorization. Now, if you think about this, if your organization requires a purchase order, and if an invoice comes in, right, as the controller, the CFO, if an invoice comes in and you're very tight on cash, one of the things is planning out your cash expenditures is very, very important. And so when you look at the importance of a purchase order, it serves as a very important control in terms of prior authorization. If in fact an invoice comes in that wasn't authorized previously, then you can say to that vendor, hey, didn't order it, where's your purchase order? And if you can kind of train your employees that everything requires a purchase order, that can really help your organization in terms of maintaining control on expenses. And, it can also have some downsides as well, meaning that employees can't get their jobs done. But that's another discussion for another day. And that really has more to do with getting the employees an understanding in terms of how to requisition the materials they need. So for cash disbursements, we're going to make the approval to do the work. We want to select and verify vendors. I had a student mention that a company that she had been working for, the head of marketing or the president of the company paid some head of marketing like $100 grand, and that person fled the country. So you want to make sure that the vendors are selected, they're verified, you've gone through and done a background check. So once a vendor has been selected, you'll go ahead and do the purchase order. Then you're going to have those goods or services received. Now, this is really where it comes into having multiple different people doing different things. Once the invoice is received from the vendor, it's matched against the purchase order, but you want to have somebody independent of the authorization verifying that the goods or services were actually received. So one person's orders it, the goods are received. You have the accountant is going through and matching up the invoice against the purchase order. You have somebody independent of this process going through and verifying that the goods or services were received. Then you've got accounts payable. Accounts payable is going to essentially look at the purchase order. They're going to look at the invoice from the vendor. They want to make sure that everything's been done prior to that invoice being paid. Then you're going to have management authorizing the payment of the accounts payable. And then the CFO or the controller is going to be approving payment to the vendor. So again, this sometimes, if you're in a smaller company, you might be saying, wow, Tchaikovsky does like one person does everything. But if you're at a large organization, you're going to want to go through and separate these out. Similarly, over here, in terms of cash receipts, you want to make sure that this kind of goes back to the sale. Are the sales made in accordance with company policies? Are we extending credit to a customer? If we are extending a credit to a customer, meaning we're going to allow them to not pay now, but to pay later, we have to go through and make sure that the customer is legitimate and that they can actually pay us. If I do work or provide or sell goods to someone who cannot pay me, what's the point? You're going to go bankrupt. So the sales manager, their jobs of sales are to do sales, but we also have to make sure that within our own organization is, can we actually get that work done? Also, if depending on the type of industry that we're in, if we're a contractor and we sign a contract to do work, basically we do work on a pool, or assuming we do work on a pool, we go over there, we install the pool for the customer, but then all of a sudden the customer says, well, I would like a second story addition on the house. If that happens, did you issue a change order? So making sure that your workers know this is the contract we have with the customer. This is what we're going to do for the customer. If the customer wants something more than what they contracted for, we have to go and talk to the appropriate personnel. One of the other things is we want to be invoicing the customer as quickly as possible. So this is so important, because if you do not invoice the customer quickly, it's going to delay in terms of getting cash. Also, kind of going back to what we saw with cash disbursements, I want to request a purchase order from the customer if it's needed. And the reason why is because I want my invoice to get paid as quickly as possible. If there is a purchase order in the system, that might be a good thing for me, just because then when it gets to accounts payable, they say, oh, we authorized this previously. Here's the purchase order. Boom, we're ready to go. So the other thing too is that once I send out an invoice, you want to essentially make sure that, did they receive it? Is there any other information that they need? As someone in accounts receivable, maintaining that relationship with the customer is very important. If there's a problem, you want to be getting the sales manager involved as early as possible. Then it's also going through in terms of payment being received. If I'm getting payment directly, that's awesome, right? I want to verify that it's been received. But also, if somebody's paying by check or something other than a wire transfer, you really want to make sure that the person who opens up the mail is separate than the person who deposits the check, basically separate from the person that is recording the payment receipt. So again, having this segregation of duties, separation of duties, whatever you'd like to call it, having the separation of duties is really, really important, because if one person is doing everything, that's when you're going to see problems happen. Is there a lockbox, right? So what's a lockbox? Essentially, this is something where the bank receives payments directly and records it to your account. So that can also be something that's going to save you a lot. I'll never forget, I was with a friend after hours at a workplace after hours, and I was with my friend, and she showed me a desk, and there was a $5 million check on it, and it was just sitting out there in the open. And I'm like going, and so what my friend did, she went to the bank, started having all the payments go there. That seemed to solve the problem. Also, too, when you have the person who's recording all the transactions, you want to make sure that they're separate from the one who's actually doing the bank reconciliation. So I realize that this may seem like a little bit off, but I just want to give you like a little bit more background prior to going through and preparing the bank reconciliation about how important the cash disbursements, cash receipt cycles are. There are a lot of great articles online, which I will be leaving basically over here. Here is the cash receipts procedure, right? That's where I'm getting a lot of my information from. And you can kind of see over here, here's another one, which is basically a segregation of duties, separating the procedures and the cash disbursement cycles. So there's a lot of things you can kind of go through and do in here. And this is why it's so important to go through and to have these separate procedures. So in any event, I want to thank you for joining me here today. Please leave any kind of questions that you might have below, and I appreciate you liking and subscribing to the videos. And if you'd like to see another one, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video. Have a great day.